Welcome everyone to the Healing Simplified podcast, where we take this journey together to simplify health and shift your perspective one step at a time. I think healing has gotten out of control. I think the healing hustle has taken over, and the journey to become healthy has become unhealthy. And I'll sit here and say that we're a part of that. Why? Social media. Social media is this big place with tons of information. The problem is it's a conversation, not a consultation. So my job with YouTube's, with being on Instagram, TikTok, and so forth, is to simplify this and spread that message and to get people to think a little bit more than just react, right? Because that's what's happening and that's why you're so confused. Today, I want to talk about when it comes to insulin, I think we have it all wrong. When it comes to glucose, I think we have it all wrong. There's specific things that are missed, one in particular, which we'll talk about, and 3 things that you can maybe start doing today in a very personalized way to actually regulate A1C, regulate your blood sugar, regulate your hyperinsulinemia, regulate your insulin resistance, diabetes, reverse T3, PCOS, high CRP, and the list goes on. And it's obviously bigger than this YouTube. And that's why we have our Nourish Nervous System 90-day program or a one-on-one coaching program called the Healing Foundation, which you can find in the link below, as well as our 9-series podcast, which is free. So here's the thing. I think when it comes to insulin, glucose, A1C, we have it all wrong. Are they important markers? 100%. I think they can tell us a lot, but there's other markers that tell us about those markers that I think people aren't looking at, like leptin, like CRP, and reverse T3, and high LDL, and triglycerides, and homocysteine, and the list goes on. This can tell us a lot about what's going on with our biology. But one in particular is very important, and that is leptin, and here's why. Leptin is a circadian signaling hormone. And what it does is it's released by your fat, travels through the bloodstream to the hypothalamus, and tells your hypothalamus your energy status, right? Number 2, it tells you energy status of what are your fat stores, nutrient, glucose availability, and so forth. How much is in the bank account that you have to spend, what's not coming in, what's needed, and so forth. And 3, when it docks in the hypothalamus, it does this between 12 and 2 a.m. at night. It does it between meals, but mainly at 12 and 2 at night. It tells the body the energy status. And this is really important because how you live and eat and move and breathe during the day is going to dictate what happens at night biologically. And remember, as I mentioned, your body goes into, or it should if you live in a way to support it, it goes into autophagy and mitophagy at night. This is when your body repairs and regenerates, immune system, thyroid, gut, and so forth. But this is when leptin is released. Why? Because leptin works with melatonin at night. And everything else, we'll just say cortisol to simplify it, is antagonistic to leptin and melatonin. Not cortisol in general, but when there's an excess amount for an extended period of time, right? Number 2, the driver of leptin issues, the driver of glucose issues, and the driver of insulin issues, so we're working backwards, is chronic stress, right? We're meant to be stressed. It builds adaptation, right? We're meant to get on the roller coaster. We're meant to work out and move. We're meant to do things. The problem is we live in a culture that bin is tipped over, right? We go, do. We never take time to recharge. We recharge our phone, but we don't recharge. We think that we wake up and because we eat within an hour, or we wear sunglasses, or we take a 5-minute break at work, or we go to the gym after work, or because we work out for 1 hour or meditate for 5 minutes, it's gonna unwind the other 23 hours and 55 minutes of the day. It's not. And the problem is our biology, which is meant to fluctuate, right? We have that adaptation to kind of build resiliency to stress, adapt to stress, and so forth. We have systems in our body that respond, but they're not meant to be here all the time. And most people are living here and you feel it, right? You have sleep issues, gut issues, thyroid issues, weight issues, hormone issues, and just chronic issues that are getting worse and worse. That little fire is not being able to put out by the fire extinguishers anymore. And now we have a 500 acre forest fire, but you're still trying to put them out with the fire extinguishers. You have fire extinguishers in your body and systems and antioxidants that put these fires out, but now you're trying to put it out with supplements, with restrictive diets, and so forth, and it's not going to work. And you know it doesn't work. What happens when we're in this chronically stressed state over time, your body kicks in different systems, lysis systems, glycolysis, glucogenolysis, proteolysis, and lipolysis. We're breaking down things to produce energy, right? So your body floods your blood with sugar because it says you need this, because you're go, doing, and you're not meeting its needs, and it's gonna pump a lot of sugar in the blood. Number two, what follows? Insulin. It's that simple. Now, if we're in this state for a long period of time, of course, you can start to see hormone problems, weight issues and so forth. But of course, now leptin's going to be affected because that excess insulin and cortisol affects those leptin receptor sites in the body, in the brain, and so forth. And it's just a vicious cycle now, right? So most people are saying that you have insulin and glucose issues because of food. It's carb related. And I'm going to share an example of why this is true and not true. It is true to a certain extent, but it's not, because it depends on the type of carbs. And you'd have to eat a lot of the wrong types of carbs to have this happen. But I actually don't think it's the carbs. I actually think it's the carbs with the high amounts of fat that are causing this issue, because what it does to and gunks up the glucose fatty acid cycle, like a seesaw in a sense, right? And this is why for people like keto works, because you're tipping the scale to that fatty acid cycle side, right? And this is why people lose weight, feel better. I've tried keto many years ago. I did it. I felt like shit the whole time. To each their own. It just didn't work for me, right? And I don't believe it's a diet that we do for a long time. We shouldn't do it for a long time. I mean, in my opinion, if you were to do it, keto carnivore, you would want to match it with the winter cycle. We produce less AMPK. We produce more mTOR. Days are shorter, more darkness. We produce more melatonin. Carbs are not as plentiful because it's winter. We're producing less insulin. So those types of diets would be more, suitable for winter months. Where was I going with this? People think it's about carbs. I think it's like sugar, they say. I think it's about the combo, because people say, oh, you're going to get diabetes if you eat donuts. It's really not the sugar in the donuts that's the problem. It's all the other stuff and the high amount of fat that cause that problem with that cycle. And I'll give you an example of why, right? The other issue with insulin resistance is having too much fat in the tissues, of course, which kind of goes with what I just said. Maybe not enough movement. And if you look at our culture, calorically, people take in a lot of fat. Yes, they take in a lot of carbs, probably not enough protein. I think they're taking in the wrong types of carbs, and a lot of these processed foods and so forth have a high amount of fat. And here's why I say that high carb diets don't cause diabetes. Now, of course, I think if you're pounding pizza and starches, yes, but I'm talking about like fruits and things like that. Because I've been doing an experiment, and I'll do a YouTube on this first. It's something I've researched for like 6 months. I started it like a month ago after a lot of research and understanding the biology. And I'll get into the biology of why it works. But I started eating about 450 to 500 grams of carbs a day. I'm getting about maybe, I don't remember the exacts because I'm not doing it every day, but 5 to 10 to 15 grams of fat and protein in there. And it's all from fruit. Fruit juices, honey, maple syrup, sugar, agave, and so forth. I'm doing that every day. But I'll go into this more. What this does is it kicks that cycle to the glucose side. You're activating FGF21, you're activating brown fat, and you're upregulating energy production, which causes weight loss. So within 14 days, I've lost 14 pounds. My energy's through the roof. I feel amazing, and my blood sugars are amazing, better than ever before. So remember, carbs don't cause diabetes. It's the state that we've been living in that sets the stage with our diet. And that's why leptin is so key, because that's how you really regulate leptin, right? Now, when it comes to leptin, remember it's a circadian signaling hormone, right? But what else does it do? Well, leptin's really interesting because it regulates glucose and glucose sensitivity in peripheral actions of glucose, but it also regulates insulin and insulin sensitivity. But everyone's focusing on glucose and insulin. We have to start focusing on our habits, our behaviors, and our environment. These matter because when you focus on these, you de-stress the system, right? So now we're not setting the stage for this problem. We're regulating leptin. We're not setting the stage for this problem. So if you eat a ton of fruit, right, which has more fructose or fructose glucose because it's sucrose, you're not going to get that, negative effect of gaining weight. Now, of course, diet matters, and I'll go into this, and that's not what this is about. It's more about leptin, right? It's about habits and behaviors. If we're not focusing on that, you can chase your insulin and glucose all you want, but you're going to go around in a circle with a diet and a supplement to regulate your blood sugar. But the second you stop that, you're going to have blood sugar, A1C, PCOS again. Why? Because you haven't changed this. Now remember, leptin is a circadian signaling hormone. The key that regulates this is sunlight. It's about getting morning sun to regulate that HP axis and that cortisol leptin relationship, right? It's about getting UVA so we can convert tryptophan to serotonin to regulate that melatonin at night. There's so many other things happening there, but it's also about getting sunset to pass the reins from the pituitary to pineal to produce melatonin to get those nighttime programs to come on, right? So it's about getting outside, taking breaks. They don't have to be long. I say this in every video. It feels good. It's important. You need to get off the roller coaster. Again, consistency is key. It doesn't have to be all day long. But you can't regulate leptin with just habits and meditating. You can't regulate leptin with just food. Sunlight is a Zeitgeber, the catalyst for regulating leptin. Why? It's a circadian signaling hormone. Now, on a little tangent, leptin is regulated by cold. But this is a little caveat because if someone has low leptin resistance, you don't want to use cold. But this is why people say cold exposure or cold ice plunges actually activate brown fat. It does because cold stimulates leptin, which activates brown fat, right? So that's another thing. And that's why I say in the winter, you want to expose yourself a little bit more to the cold. You don't have to do an ice plunge, but maybe you go out without a scarf on. Maybe you don't wear a big jacket and a lighter jacket. Maybe you go outside a little bit more and spend time outside versus in your warm house, right? That's another video in itself. So the first thing in regulating leptin to regulate insulin blood glucose is getting outside, which is changing your habits, which is changing your environment. Your environment shapes your biology. If you want to reshape your biology, you have to change your environment, your habits, and behaviors. Number two, when it comes to leptin, you can use nutrition, but this has to be here first, right? It has to be there first. Now, I'm not going to say do the diet that I'm experimenting with. I'm experimenting with it now to fail it, to understand it, to create awareness around it. So if I want to use it with specific clients, I can. Right now, I'm just playing with it. I've done the research. I like the way I feel. I like the science behind it, and it's pretty amazing. But typically what you want to do when you're leptin resistant, which means high leptin, seriously low leptin, PCOS, insulin resistance, high A1C, high reverse T3, high homocysteine, high CRP, and so forth. We go over this in the 90-day nervous system program and one-to-one. Is you want to slowly work on your feeding window first, which is eating closer to sunrise and sunset. Because remember, if you eat earlier or eat after sunset, what happens now? You will actually spike insulin and glucose because the state that you're in, and you're going to inhibit leptin. Number two, with that is your activity level. You want to make sure that you're not working out before sunrise or working out after sunset. Same thing, insulin, glucose, cortisol. You're going to inhibit leptin at night. You're not going to be able to regulate it. You're not going to regulate your glucose, your insulin, your blood sugar, and even weight loss, because leptin is huge when it comes to weight loss, right? Because it activates brown fat, which eats white fat. So those two things are really important. And of course, we go into these way more depth in our program in one-on-one coaching. The third thing with regards to nutrition is once you've done the habits, behaviors of sunlight, once you've worked on your feeding window, you're doing these separately in your fueling window, then you want to work on your ratio of carbs, protein and fats to carbs. You initially, of course, people are probably here, protein, fats, carbs. And you want to slowly look at your protein, look at your density of protein, right? Am I eating a lot of smoothies or protein, powders and eggs and light proteins? Bring more density in, like muscle meats and fatty fish, whitefish, shellfish. That density is like putting logs on a fire. It creates more sustainability. So you get more of a gap between meals. So you can allow leptin to dock between meals, right? To help regulate your appetite, your blood sugar, and so forth. So you want to work with variety. You want to work with density. But at the same time, once you're there, you want to work with your carb intake. You want to work with the type of carbs. And this is all person specific, of course. We want to stay away from processed carbs. You probably eat more roots in squashes in the winter and way more fruits in the summer, right? Based on our biology and what the sun does to our biology. But if it's in summer, you'd probably gravitate towards more fruits. But at the same time, you want to find your sweet spot. So when you pull up that protein, it's not about grams, it's about what's satiating me. You want to make sure that you're pulling your carbs down slowly at one meal at a time to find your sweet spot. So maybe you typically, for example, eat an apple with breakfast. Maybe you start with a half an apple. You have your eggs, your ground beef, and half an apple, right? And you pay attention to how you feel. How is this working with me? And you're going to do that at each meal until you find your sweet spot of, I'm starting to have more energy, I'm sleeping better at night, I'm losing a little bit of weight, my labs are regulating, my glucose is actually regulating. It's not just about cutting out your carbs, because yes, those carbs can put more gasoline on the fire when you have leptin resistance, insulin resistance, and glucose resistance in a sense, right? And that's the point here, is carbs are more fuel on the fire. So you have to find that sweet spot of what's working for you, because we still do need some. And I have to be honest with you, some people that we get to a point where they're not getting much, but over time we're able to add them back in. And some people are still getting a good amount, but we've cut them in half, right? And they're getting such amazing results. So I think there's a lot in this video. I think there's a lot, but really what we want to understand is our habits matter. Our behaviors matter. Our environments matter. That dictates our biology, right? Our light environment matters when it comes to glucose, insulin, and leptin. What we eat, when we eat, and how we're eating to not only meet our physiological needs, but de-stress the system is also important as well. Again, there's a lot to unwind here. If you got questions, put them in the comments. See ya.